If you were a kid watching Nickelodeon in the late 90s, early 2000s, you probably kind of remember 100 Deeds for Eddie McDowd. It was the show where a kid gets turned into a dog and has to do 100 good deeds in order to become a kid again. To this day, it is probably the stupidest premise of a show I have ever heard. It sounds like a 5-year-old wrote it. And I promise you, from the bottom of my heart, that unless you watched it religiously, and no one on earth did except, I guess, me now, that is the reason you remember this show at all if you do. Because they made a huge deal of this show when it debuted on SNCC, and the first episode was released to a lot of fanfare that immediately died down, like overnight. I remember watching the first episode as a kid, and although it wasn't all that good, the first episode of this show is by far the best one. It is the only episode that has some level of competence behind it, to the point where you can actually tell it's where most of their budget went. So why am I reviewing this show? Well, if I'm reviewing it, it obviously means I've watched it. So why the fuck did I watch it? The truth is, going in, I didn't think it would be that bad. The premise is dumb as fuck, but a dumb premise doesn't mean a bad show. But it is. Holy shit, this show is dog shit. Yeah, that pun was intended. Fuck you. I just had a thought one day, wouldn't it be funny if I watched and reviewed Eddie McDowd? Then I started watching it, and that shit got so bad, so fast. But, after I made up my mind to review the show, I decided to just watch all the episodes that were available on YouTube. When I review a show, I go all in, or try to. But this show was so bad, so cringe, so boring and repetitive, that when I say I watched it, I mean that after a certain point, I was watching it at 1.5 speed, watching it while taking a shit, etc. Because after a certain point, I realized I didn't have to really watch the show to know what was going on. It's that bad. It becomes that predictable. It didn't help that I was watching this show at the same time I was watching Oz, and I'll give you 3 guesses which show I was more fucking invested in. But unlike most things I've reviewed, I did not watch every episode of the show, because they're not all available on YouTube. All of Season 1 is, but Season 2 is missing an episode, and Season 3 is missing 4. And trust me, I'm not bent out of shape about missing those few episodes. After watching the rest of the show for free, I was damn sure not gonna pay to watch them. Oh, and by the way, thank you so much to Aaron Pratt, aka Electrically Al, who uploaded all those episodes and gave me permission to use them for this review. Thank you so much. Okay, so the premise, as you know, is stupid. A bad kid gets turned into a dog and has to do 100 good deeds to turn back into a kid. Sounds like a child came up with the idea. The fact that not just 1, but 3 grown adults created this show is bizarre. The fact that Nickelodeon heard this pitch and greenlit this show is also bizarre. Then there's the cast. They got Seth Green to do the voice of the dog during a time in his career when you wouldn't think he'd be taking roles like this. Joe Piscopo is in it, which makes more sense. I wasn't surprised by that at all. Like my friend Gex once said,
"Don't take career advice from Joe Piscopo."
Oh, and Danny Tamborelli's in this, which makes perfect sense. He probably had a contract with Nick during this era. He's only in the first season, though. Oh, and Brenda Song is here in probably one of her earliest roles. Richard Mole is also in it as the Drifter, sort of the show's main antagonist, but also the guy who wants Eddie to do good. He was famous for a couple other things like Night Court, a show I've never watched. Looking up his filmography, I was actually most familiar with his voice acting roles. He was Two-Face on Batman the Animated Series. And I gotta say, he's probably the best actor out of the live-action actors on this show. His character gets very annoying over time, but that's more the writer's fault. He's one of the few actors who feels like he was trying. Oh, and of course, the best actor on the entire show, Rowdy, the dog who actually plays Eddie. So the best way I can think of to really attack this show is to just go over the notes I was making while watching it. So here goes. Okay, so the first episode of the show is the closest it ever comes to being good. By a lot. This is the episode that has the highest production value, the best writing. This doesn't make it good, but you can at least see some talent being put behind it. The music is that same horn section that I swear to God they were using in every live-action fucking Nick show in the 90s. Listen to this. Hey, adults running into trash cans. That's That's funny, right? That's fucking hilarious. Isn't that so funny, 90s Nick? The dog mouth movements for when they talk actually look good, and that is the one thing that stays looking good throughout the series. It's kind of cool that Eddie's human face is never shown. That's a thing that actually takes talent to pull off. And when he slicks his bandana back like it's hair, that made me laugh. The part of this episode that actually made me laugh the hardest, though, was this scene.
Hey, the name's Sabatini Cipriano.
Oh my god! What? Jesus Christ. That would be like if they named Brenda Song's character Ching Chang Chong. Like, they had to make his first name an Italian surname, too. Nobody at any point was like, hey, that name's a little, Oh, also, there are about 20 jokes in this episode where putting a dog down is a punchline, which I find much funnier watching this ironically than I ever would watching this sincerely. This is a kid's show on a kid's channel. I don't know how they got away with this many putting a dog to sleep jokes. And this is the whole series, not just this episode. For a show that's painfully tame and by the numbers unfunny 95% of the time, it's somehow also not funny when they get their balls big enough to make a joke that's actually fucked up. Because it's never done in a way that's humorous. Every time it's the dog catcher saying some shit like, I sure can't wait to send this dog to the gas chamber. I'm not paraphrasing by very much. Watch this show if you don't believe me.
Why isn't anyone else freaking out here? This dog's a miracle.
The only miracle about that dog is I haven't put him down yet.
Oh, hey, Danny boy, how's it hanging? Show me where he touched you. Alright, the second episode isn't terrible. It does pick up right after the first. So Eddie has the ability to talk to other dogs, and dogs have human brains. Like, Salvatore knows what dancing the merengue is. But this episode is wild because it is revealed that the drifter who turned Eddie into a dog has also erased his parents from existence. This man not only gave this kid a ridiculous out-of-bounds punishment, he also erased his parents, who I assume were completely innocent, from existence until he finishes his good deeds. Want to see how Eddie reacts to this?
Your parents don't exist anymore, and they won't until you do enough good deeds to get turned back into a kid.
That's not fair, man.
Okay, the third episode is kind of important because this is the episode where Gigi is introduced. And the thing with Gigi is creepy. Gigi is Eddie's on and off love interest for like 2 episodes of the series. Eddie is a human trapped in a dog's body. He still had the hots for Justin's sister Gwen in the first episode after becoming a dog. I completely forgot to mention this, but the last person Eddie bullied is the only person that can hear him talk. And that person is the kid Justin whose family he lives with. Anyway, moving forward. Point is, he's now a human in a dog's body who has the hots for another dog. To his credit, he is horrified by this. This is a horrible implication that I am shocked the show had the balls to write. Allison Hannigan does the voice of Gigi, and she is absolutely fucking terrible in this role. A French accent is one of the easiest accents to emulate, but just listen to hers.
Why do you insult me? Was the romantic Eddie just an act? Is this what's deep down inside you?
Well, I'm not very good at the new math.
The new math? As opposed to the old math? You know, math. The unwavering thing that governs the physics of the universe that never ever changes. I do love that they kept Eddie a prick even as a dog. Like, he cleans up pee with the dad's robe. Jesus Christ. And holy shit, they actually show his reaction to a thermometer going into his ass. I also love how Justin doesn't even try to hide that he's having one-sided conversations with his dog. No one else knows your dog can talk, and you're just having unnatural conversations with him as if he's human in front of everyone. And now comes the beginning of the end for this show. And yes, it already happens by episode 4, because this is the beginning of Eddie clearly not giving a shit about ever becoming a kid again, or if his parents ever exist again. He gets Justin to TP a house, and I was just sitting there like, hey stupid, you're still a dog and your parents don't exist. Do you not even love your parents? And it's obvious he doesn't because he just does shit like this the rest of the show, and at no point is he ever shown to be worried about his parents ever again.
He won't know it's you. You're wearing a mask, Einstein.
Oh yeah, not bad, Eddie.
Except yes, they will, because fucking look at it. Episode 5 was directed by Sean Astin? What? Oh yeah, this is the basketball episode. I remember this. So it's time to talk about Flacco. Flacco was established early on as the main villain of the show. He's the bully that took Eddie's place at the school and is the one making Justin's life hell. And I swear to God, after the most clear-cut setup you can imagine, this character disappears by the 10th episode. The show just forgets the character exists. I don't know if this actor dropped out or whatever, but this is also a thing that is going to happen a lot on this show moving forward. But the reason I'm bringing Flacco up now is because, and I shit you not, in this episode, and only in this episode, Flacco suddenly starts talking like a black kid. He did not sound like this before this episode, but all of a sudden, he's playing basketball and talking like a white guy trying to sound black. And, just fucking listen to this.
Well, well, well. If it isn't Milk Boy. Hey, you know his mommy called the school?
No, I was...
Yes, the principal went ballistic, man. Rumor has it, they kicked Eddie out of the country. Listen up, Runt. The only way you could play in this game is if I rolled you up and made you my basketball. Yeah.
Rudy, you got some splaining to do. And again, this is an easy good deed, and Eddie fucks it up for the first half of the episode, and it is now very obvious that Eddie doesn't care about anyone or anything, including himself. He just clearly wants to stay a dog and for his parents to not exist. Episode 6. Okay, so now the cracks are getting wider because it's becoming very clear that any part of this show that doesn't involve Eddie is generic, boring sitcom bullshit. It's not funny, it's not entertaining, it's just fucking stupid and hard to sit through. Episode 9, Eddie is playing the piano, which makes no fucking sense because he's a dog. And from now on, you're gonna see more and more of Eddie using his paws in ways that a dog cannot use its paws. And I know what you're gonna say. Hey, stupid, this is a show about a fucking kid getting turned into a dog where the other dogs talk. Yeah, I fucking know. But the whole conflict comes from the fact that dogs have limitations. Being a dog sucks for reasons like they can't turn a doorknob, they can't hold a pencil, they can't do A, B, and C. That's the incentive for Eddie to become human again. Once you rob the show of those incentives, the whole premise falls flat because now, being a dog doesn't look so bad. It breaks the show. He already forgot that his parents are erased from existence. The least you could do is make him have reasons to want to be human again. I think this was the episode that finally put me in a coma. It's truly amazing how quickly this show went from being stupid but entertaining to being just fucking stupid. Alright, episode 11 though, this one is memorable. For starters, Charlie Adler is in it, which is awesome. He's one of my favorite voice actors. But the real reason I remember this episode is because I fucking hated it. And not because it was boring. This episode is downright ugly and cruel. Eddie McDowd is actually evil in this episode. He frames another dog for a crime he didn't commit and leaves him to be put to sleep for almost the entire episode. He is shown not feeling guilty about this at all. Eddie McDowd is a piece of shit, and this episode was really hard to watch. Episode 14. I want you to witness the editing in the beginning of this episode. It speaks for itself.
Heads up! Gangway! Talking dog coming through and there's something very big and scary gaining on me! And she's about to plow into that snow cone stand! Oh, that had to hurt. Dog, catch it down! Let me help you clean up those snow cones.
That's the last straw. I never want to see another mangy mud as long as I live.
And now I'm going to show you the name of the person who directed this episode. Are you ready for this? You're not ready for this. Christopher Coppola. A fucking Coppola directed an episode of 100 Deeds for Eddie McDowd. No fucking way. Get the fuck out of here. Maybe it's someone else with the last name Coppola. Oh my god. No. No way. I don't believe it. Okay, I'm starting to believe it. The writers clearly do not give a fucking shit anymore at this point. The lady on the bike runs over a branch, and she somehow knows the dogs put it there. Like, branches can just fall off trees, you know that, right? And this scene. You can't catch up with that train? Seriously? Episode 15. This episode is a hallmark of everything wrong with this series. How does Eddie let this lady kidnap him? He's shown using his paws to turn a doorknob, play a video game, grab a file, but he got kidnapped by an old woman. Get the fuck out of here. This is all in the same episode, by the way. And the dad says the dog next door took his money, like he has no chance of ever seeing it again. Did you try walking next door and asking your neighbor? You know where this fucking dog lives. Episode 19 ends on a cliffhanger that, I am not kidding, never gets resolved. Like when I watched the following episode, I thought maybe I'd missed one, but I didn't. There were no missing episodes from this season. The episode just ends on a cliffhanger where Eddie has to decide whether or not to save Justin from a disco ball landing on his head. And there is no episode where this is ever picked up again. The show hadn't been canceled yet. Why wasn't this resolved? Oh yeah, and Eddie's friends with a pug named Salvatore, whose nickname is Sally. But some of the time, Eddie is friends with this other dog instead of Sally. And this dog was clearly a substitute for the pug because they're never in the same episode together. And then this dog just disappears, and Sally is his permanent best friend for the rest of the show. Okay? Okay, so that's season 1's lows and lows. And you can clearly see how little fucks the writers actually gave. But I promise it only gets worse from here. In season 2, they change Eddie's voice actor. It's no longer Seth Green. And the change is noticeable, because for all the faults this show had, at least Seth Green's voice had a sort of charisma and distinctness to it. This new guy sounds like I don't even know what.
Ready, set, lunchtime!
And they replaced Gwen with Tori, which is the absolute worst replacement in the entire fucking show. Gwen was a total bitch. But Tori is the most annoying character on the show. Her only defining character trait is she's English. And it's very obvious that she's not because she is doing the worst Cockney accent I've ever heard.
Core blimey! What? That must have been Mr. Taylor on the horn. Me host father from the States.
And she's loud and manic and plays music, and I just cannot fucking stand her. And when they changed the theme song to Who Let the Dogs Out. So you spent money licensing a then still hugely popular song for your theme song, but no money on real writers, huh? Okay. In the first episode of season 2, Eddie gets homesick and looks for his family, and this happens.
Your parents have moved, Edward.
Moved? Where?
It don't matter. You know the deal. They don't remember you. And they won't until you finish them deeds.
Hold on. Eddie's family was erased. They did not move and forget about him. They are gone. The only place they moved to was off this plane of reality. This was not the fucking deal. This was established in a previous episode, and in a show this short, you can't retcon your fucking episodes. Season 1 was awful, but seasons 2 and 3 are fucking infuriating. Episode 3. So this happened.
Remember, the sulfuric acid is added to the water, not the other way around.
Marvin? Marvin?
Are you okay?
Marvin, you added water to the hydrochloric acid?
Who's proofreading this fucking script? Alright, episode 9 is actually kinda interesting. The first interesting episode of the show I have seen for many episodes. Eddie meets another dog who used to be human just like him. That's different. There is a scene where the dog's owner admits to Justin that he can hear his dog talk too, and it was actually genuinely funny. And we find out that when you turn back into a kid, everyone involved forgets everything, which doesn't make a lot of sense. If you want the kid to stay on the right path, wouldn't you want them to remember that they were punished?
Ooh, don't go in there, sweetheart. It's covered in poison ivy.
Yeah, because poison ivy just grows in city parks. People just let poison ivy grow in places like that. Oh, and Josh Server was in the hockey episode. I love this guy. And in the final episode, the Drifter starts acting like this.
Hey, everybody! Look at me! I'm Eddie McDowd, and I do whatever I want! Hello, balloons. You sure look colorful, joyful, and happy, but I'm Eddie McDowd!
Gee, I wonder which famous episode of a cartoon this is ripping off. Oh yeah, and Tori learns Eddie can talk and starts to understand him. Thank God the show ended here, because giving this character someone else to talk to is not what I fucking needed. And that's it. That's the show. Eddie McDowd was canceled. It deserved to be canceled. It deserved to be canceled way before it was canceled. Eddie McDowd is a dumbass show made by dumbass people who were incredibly lucky. I don't know which child's innocence they sacrificed to this monster to greenlight this show, but this show is so bad, it might have been twins. Seth Green left after season 1, and thank God. This was after The Spy Who Shagged Me came out. And I think the same year that Family Guy debuted, plus he was on Buffy too. There was no way he was hanging around after this. This show was beneath him. And he's not the only one. After season 1, Danny Tamborelli left, and Morgan Kibbe, who played Gwen, was written out in the debut of season 2. And apparently her reasons for leaving were because the show was embarrassing. Could you imagine an actress in her first ever gig on cable TV quitting because the show is too cringe? That's hilarious. I'd like to point out that Joe Piscopo graduated from only doing a dog's voice to actually being on the show. He became more proactive in the show after the first season. Again, this is somehow not surprising. I thought it would be funny to review this forgotten show and watch it in the process because, like probably you, I forgot everything about it except the premise. But it wasn't fun. This show is a slog. The moments that are so bad they're good are buried under the moments that are so bad they're bad. But I will say this, some of the aspects of its production are actually funnier than the show itself. Watching this show in its entirety is basically watching a show go down in flames. You can gradually see the writers giving less and less fucks, actors abandoning ship. It's like watching the Hindenburg explode. It would be cool if we got that story, because it feels like the story behind Eddie McDowd is much more interesting than the story of Eddie McDowd. On second thought, I'm good. And like the other video I made about dogs, this one has some of the funniest reviews I have ever read. So I'm going to end the episode by reading and reviewing some of these reviews. IMDb is really the only place that has reviews for this show, so that's where I'm getting them. If you don't want to sit for this part, just skip to this timestamp for an ending to this video that will probably shock you. Some of these reviews are from a long time ago. This one is from March 10th, 2001. Best live action show Nickelodeon ever put together. No, the fuck it's not. Get the fuck out of here. This show is an absolute gem. Nick has created shows in the past that lacked so many elements that go together to make a successful show. Mostly their best shows have been animated, like their biggest hit Rugrats. But the majority of their live action shows have been, well, rather pathetic, like Clarissa Explains It All. Not a pathetic show. It wasn't my favorite show, but I wouldn't have said Clarissa was pathetic. The Secret World of Alex Mack. And My Brother and Me. Wait, hold the fuck on. There's no way. You cannot think this fucking piece of shit was better than My Brother and Me. Fucking goo? Come on, man. Get the fuck out of here. So with such a past filled with mediocre shows, oh, fuck you, dude. It was quite surprising that Nick created such a fantastic show. Yes, folks, Nickelodeon finally got it right. Oh my god, yeah, if you were dropped on your fucking head as a baby. The show has great writing, no it fucking doesn't. And with its talented cast, often joined by classic television veterans Richard Mall and Joe Piscopo, the show serves up hearty, laugh-out-loud moments for the whole family. This review was written by somebody who worked on this show. I am convinced of that this was... There's no way this was not... Doesn't this just sound like it was written by somebody that was, like, working on the show, who wanted people to watch the show? Buffy the Vampire Slayer writes October 16th, 2001. Isn't it crazy? So that last review was before 9/11. That's nuts. And then this one was right after. So 5 weeks after 9/11 happened, this guy takes it upon himself to write a review for Eddie McDowd. One of the best Nick romps of recent years. I have to thank God they didn't bring back Clarissa instead of starting this show. Why do you guys hate Clarissa so much? It wasn't the best show in the world, but it wasn't as bad as Eddie McDowd. A cool show, but it would be better with Gwen. The show from January 2nd, 2002. God, I guess there was a Gwen fanboy hanging out in 2002. Great visual effects. This review is from November 24th, 1999. That is crazy. That That is so crazy that this website was around in the 90s and people were actually leaving reviews in the 90s. That alone is impressive. The fact that somebody made a review in 1999 of Eddie McDowd on IMDb when the internet was still in its infancy is wild. This is some of the best example of state-of-the-art visual effects I've ever seen on TV. This show definitely betters the animation for Babe 1 and 2, okay? And is light years beyond the stuff in Dr. Dolittle. I guess they're talking about the animals' mouths talking. I've heard there are no animatronics used. Best of all, my kids, ages 3 and 6, love the show. How weird is it that those fucking kids are now grown-ass adults? That is wild. And I'll bet you they don't remember a fucking thing about Eddie McDowd. But I think the best thing is that Eddie's on-again, off-again romance with Gigi is really very cool. Yeah, that's very cool. That's very cool. That part of the show is fucking disgusting. These last two are from 2021, so these are recent. 10 out of 10 should have had a proper ending. The idea of the show is pretty good, and the first season was great, but with season 2 starting, they lost some of the cast, which made the show somewhat worse. Season 3 was even worse, which sadly led to the show being canceled on a cliffhanger. It wasn't the most popular, it shouldn't have been canceled, so it shouldn't have been canceled. That's the main takeaway from this. It had a lot of potential and was a good show. It did not have a lot of potential and was a bad show, but here's the next one. I miss it, and it being canceled before a proper ending was horrible. So for the final part of this video, I decided to do something a little crazy. As you can tell from these reviews, the hardcore fans of this show really hated that it was canceled before Eddie finished his deeds. Some of those people are probably going to watch this video, and I don't want to disappoint them. So I decided to write several possible endings to 100 Deeds for Eddie McDowd, in case, it ever gets revived. Yes, I wrote Eddie McDowd fanfiction. Enjoy. The dog ending. Eddie never finishes his good deeds, stays a dog, eventually grows old, and dies or gets put to sleep. This is the most likely ending to the show if things continue to go on as they did, because a snail could do good deeds faster than this idiot. As a matter of fact, this is how the show ends in my own personal headcanon. Oh, and Eddie's parents are just gone. Forever. They don't exist anymore. The human ending. Eddie does his good deeds and turns back into a human. He learns from his mistakes and becomes friends with Justin. This is probably how the writers would have actually ended the show. I hate this ending. The human ending, but he's still an asshole. Eddie does his good deeds and turns back into a human, but considering his general attitude towards doing the good deeds the entire show was, I guess I'll do a good deed now, and he acted like a piece of shit the rest of the time, he's still an asshole when he turns back into a kid. He does not remember Justin, so continues to pick on him. He probably eventually goes to prison for shooting his parents or something, whatever. The talking dog ending. More and more people learn Eddie can talk and he becomes famous. Justin's family makes a bunch of money off him, and he eventually gets imprisoned by the SCP Foundation. The actual real dog ending. The Drifter dies or gets kicked out of the Drifter Council. Eddie's good deeds no longer count, and nobody can hear him talk anymore. This is the dog ending, except now no one can understand him for the rest of his life. The dog killer ending. Eddie does his good deeds, becomes human, and starts hating dogs. He goes on a rampage, killing innocent dogs. There's even a part where Sally goes, Eddie, baby, it's me, your pal Sally, don't you remember? But Eddie doesn't remember, and kills him. The what have I done ending. Eddie encounters Gigi one more time. Things get serious, and they decide to do things doggy style. Eddie eventually turns back into a kid, and must live the rest of his life with the knowledge that he had sex with a dog. Oh, you think the Drifter is gonna wipe his memory? Not in my ending, I'm retconning that shit. The Joe Piscopo ending. This show becomes the turning point in Joe Piscopo's career. He starts landing actual roles after this and becomes a respected comedian. As of 2024, he's toured on sold-out shows, created several comedy series, and has even won an Emmy. Then he wakes up.
Don't take career advice from Joe Piscopo.
If you stuck around this long, please like, subscribe, and hit up that Patreon. What are your thoughts on Eddie McDowd? Leave them in the comments. And, bye, I guess.